A billionaire CEO opens his car door to find a little boy at the wheel, grinning. "Come on, I'm bringing you back to my mom." The man, floored, is about to ask him who his mom even is, before freezing in shock at the boy's familiar smile. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from, and please like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Grayson Richards rubbed his temples, the dim glow of his office lights casting long shadows across polished mahogany. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the steady hum of the city below and the occasional ping from his phone, reminding him of the acquisition deal hanging by a thread. Midnight had come and gone, yet here he was, unraveling spreadsheets and weighing profit margins, trying to silence the gnawing emptiness that always seemed to resurface when the workday ended. With a sigh, he gathered his things and rode the elevator down to the underground garage, exhaustion pressing down on him. His driver had been dismissed hours ago, and the idea of sliding into the quiet comfort of his Aston Martin was the only thing that held appeal. But as the elevator doors parted and he strode towards his car, Grayson stopped short. A small figure was perched in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, legs too short to even reach the pedals. For a moment, Grayson wondered if he was hallucinating, sleep deprivation playing tricks. But then the door swung open, and a little boy, no older than 6, peered up at him with bright, mischief-filled eyes. "Come on, I'm bringing you back to my mom," the boy declared, his grin wide and confident. Grayson stared, completely at a loss. His brain stuttered, flipping through every possible explanation: an employee's kid playing a prank, a security breach, some strange attempt at extortion. But none of it added up. "How did you get in here?" he demanded, his voice sharp, though shock dulled the edge. The boy only shrugged, unfazed. "The door was open." "The door was not open," Grayson countered, eyes narrowing. Security in this building was airtight, and his car alone required both a key fob and a fingerprint scan. The boy's grin didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider, as if Grayson's irritation was amusing. In the muted light, his eyes sparkled, and for the first time, Grayson noticed the smile. The way it dimpled one cheek, slightly off-center, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, a smile Grayson had seen 1,000 times in the mirror. A chill spread slowly down his spine, replacing irritation with something colder. "Who are you?" The question was quieter, unsteady. The boy tilted his head, puzzled by the intensity of Grayson's stare. "I told you," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm Liam. Are you coming or not?" Liam. The name fell like a stone into the silence, sending ripples through Grayson's mind. Too familiar. Too much. His hand slipped from the car door handle, fingers numb. Grayson took a step back, suddenly needing distance, air. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the security team's number, but couldn't press call. Couldn't move. All he could do was stare at the boy, at Liam, with wide eyes, heart pounding in a way no business deal had ever managed. "Look," Liam said, huffing like he was running out of patience. "I can't drive, obviously. So you're gonna have to do it." He patted the passenger seat decisively. "Come on." Somehow, the sheer absurdity of it broke Grayson from his trance. "This isn't funny," he snapped, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Is this some kind of game? Did someone put you up to this?" Liam rolled his eyes with all the exasperation a 6-year-old could muster. "I just want to go home," he said, a hint of a pout in his tone. "Mom's waiting." "Mom." The words slammed into Grayson's chest like a freight train, knocking the air from his lungs. "Your mom?" he managed, voice strangled. "Yeah," Liam said slowly, like Grayson was the child and not him. "Emma." "Duh." Grayson's world tilted, past and present colliding with dizzying force. "Emma." It was impossible. 7 years without a word, a sign. 7 years since he'd walked out of that tiny apartment, hands clenched, head high, pretending he wasn't leaving everything that mattered behind. This was a mistake. It had to be. Some sick joke. But Liam was looking at him with those bright eyes, so familiar it hurt. Grayson's legs moved of their own accord. Before he knew it, he was sliding into the driver's seat, hands trembling as he gripped the wheel. His mind screamed to stop, to think, to demand answers. But all he could do was turn the key and follow Liam's directions as if on autopilot. The city blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow. Liam chattered on, blissfully unaware of Grayson's mounting panic. Every detail was a fresh blow, his favorite color, the way his mom made pancakes shaped like stars, the bedtime stories she told. Each word stripped another layer of Grayson's composure, leaving nerves raw and bleeding. And then Mom said, "Oh, turn left here," Liam announced, pointing enthusiastically. Grayson jerked the wheel, tires squealing slightly on the wet asphalt. He couldn't reconcile it, the impossibility of Liam, of Emma, of this whole nightmarish dream. Couldn't process the way Liam's hair curled over his ears, dark and unruly, or how his eyes glinted with a mix of defiance and charm Grayson knew all too well. "Is Mom gonna be mad?" Liam asked suddenly, peering up with genuine concern. "She said I wasn't supposed to talk to strangers, but you're not really a stranger, right?" Grayson swallowed, throat tight. I don't know," he said honestly. His voice cracked. Liam seemed to accept that, shrugging and turning back to the window, unconcerned. Grayson gripped the wheel tighter, trying to keep his breathing steady. When they finally pulled up in front of a modest suburban house, Grayson's heart was a sledgehammer in his chest. Warm light spilled from the windows, curtains drawn halfway, framing a silhouette in the kitchen. Liam wriggled impatiently. "Come on," he urged, already halfway out the door. But Grayson couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He watched as Liam sprinted up the porch steps, as the door opened, and Emma's figure appeared, startled, eyes wide, hand flying to her mouth as she froze. Their eyes met through the windshield. 7 years fell away in an instant, and Grayson's heart stopped, suspended between past and present, between hope and guilt. And for the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. Grayson's hands were still trembling on the wheel, his knuckles bone-white against the dark leather. The warmth of the house lights seemed to mock the icy shock settling in his veins. Emma was frozen in the doorway, one hand still clutching the doorknob, her eyes wide and unblinking as they locked with his. Liam had already slipped past her, chattering about the drive, completely oblivious to the thunderous silence between the two adults. Grayson's breath was shallow, his heartbeat deafening. 7 years? 7 years since he'd seen those eyes, that face, framed by dark waves that cascaded just past her shoulders. Time had softened some edges but left others sharper, more guarded. For a moment, either of them moved. Grayson's mind screamed at him to get out of the car, to explain, to apologize, to do anything other than sit there with his heart in his throat and his past staring him in the face. But his legs wouldn't cooperate, cemented in place by guilt and disbelief. Emma blinked first, the spell breaking. She took a step back, her expression shifting from shock to something colder, her mouth pressing into a tight line. The door started to close, slow but deliberate, as if giving him one last chance to make a choice. Grayson inhaled sharply and forced himself to move. His legs were wooden, knees unsteady as he stumbled out of the car. The door clicked shut before he reached the porch, but the lights didn't go out. Through the window, he could see Liam tugging at Emma's sleeve, pointing back towards the driveway with wide, excited eyes. Grayson stopped at the bottom of the steps, the words tangled in his throat. He felt like an intruder, an uninvited ghost come back to haunt a life that had moved on without him. Before he could gather the nerve to knock, the door creaked open again. Emma stood there, arms crossed tightly over her chest, eyes narrowed and wary. "What the hell are you doing here?" Her voice was low, strained with a mix of disbelief and anger. Grayson flinched, the familiar timbre of her voice cutting deeper than he'd expected. His throat was too dry. He cleared it and tried again. "I didn't know," he managed, the words stumbling out in a hoarse whisper. "Emma, I didn't know." Her eyes flashed. Didn't know what exactly? She snapped. That you had a son? Or that we even existed? Emma, please, he started, but she cut him off with a glare that could freeze oceans. No. Her voice was steel. You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up out of nowhere and… She broke off, her breath hitching, eyes glistening before she looked away sharply. Grayson's chest ached, every instinct screaming to reach out, to close the gap between them. But he stayed rooted, hands fisted at his sides. I didn't know, he repeated, voice cracking. I swear, Emma, I had no idea. If I'd known… She scoffed, a bitter sound that twisted the knife in deeper. If you'd known, what? She demanded. You would have shown up sooner? Sacrificed a meeting for once in your life? Grayson flinched again, guilt flaring hot and raw. He'd earned that. Every word. Inside, Liam's muffled voice floated through the open door, a bright contrast to the tension in the air. Mom, is he staying for dinner? Emma's jaw clenched, her eyes darting between Grayson and the hallway where Liam had disappeared. Her posture deflated by an inch, the fight draining to leave only exhaustion and resignation. I don't want to do this here, she muttered finally. Not in front of him. She hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door wider with a stiff nod. You might as well come in. Grayson hesitated for a heartbeat, half expecting her to slam the door in his face again, then stepped inside cautiously. The warmth was immediate, wrapping around him like a blanket, carrying the faint scent of vanilla and something freshly baked. It felt like a punch to the gut. Liam reappeared in the hallway, beaming. You're staying, he declared, clapping his hands in delight. I knew it! Grayson's heart squeezed painfully at the sight. He tried for a smile, but it faltered. Only if your mom says it's okay, he managed. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't contradict him. Liam, oblivious to the undercurrents, grabbed Grayson's hand with surprising strength and dragged him towards the kitchen. Dinner was an exercise in awkward silences and hesitant glances. Liam filled the quiet with stories about school and the neighbor's dog and a turtle he wanted for Christmas. Grayson latched onto every word, starved for details, for pieces of this life he hadn't even known existed. Emma's eyes stayed fixed on her plate, shoulders tense, knife and fork moving mechanically. The only times she looked up were when Liam directed a question at her, her responses clipped and distracted. Mom makes the best pancakes, Liam announced proudly around a mouthful of pasta. They look like stars. Grayson's lips twitched despite himself. She always did, he murmured softly, the memory of lazy Sunday mornings and batter-smudged kisses surfacing unbidden. Emma's fork stilled, her fingers curling tight around the handle. She didn't look up, but Grayson saw the tremor in her hand, the slight catch in her breath. Liam's eyes darted between them, confused by the sudden silence. Mom, can he stay for pancakes? He asked, wide-eyed and hopeful. Please? Emma's eyes shut briefly, the sigh slipping out before she could stop it. It's late, she said tightly. I think it's time for bed. Liam's face fell, but he didn't argue, sliding off his chair with a pout. But you'll come back, right? He asked Grayson, small fingers curling into the fabric of Grayson's sleeve. The sheer force of that tiny hand nearly broke him. Grayson's voice cracked. If your mom says it's okay, he managed. Emma's shoulders stiffened further, but she didn't say no. Didn't say anything at all, just turned away sharply, arms wrapping around herself. Liam, seemingly satisfied, shot Grayson one last dazzling grin before scampering off, leaving them alone in the silence. Grayson cleared his throat, the words sticking. Emma, I don't, she whispered, voice raw. Just don't. It doesn't change anything. Grayson's heart fractured. Emma, please. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. She laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. No. You left because you loved your career more. The truth was a blade to the gut. Grayson swallowed, throat tight. I made a mistake. Her eyes met his, dark and wounded. Yeah, she breathed. You did. The words hung, sharp and irreversible, in the space between them. Grayson's hands trembled, nails biting into his palms, the weight of 7 years pressing down on him with merciless force. And in the hallway, Liam's soft hums drifted back, bright and innocent, entirely unaware of the storm unraveling behind him. The silence stretched, brittle and suffocating. Emma's eyes were rimmed with red, her fingers clenched tightly around her own arms, as if holding herself together through sheer willpower. Grayson had seen her angry before, had weathered her scathing remarks and fiery comebacks, but this quiet, shattered version of her was worse, infinitely worse. Liam's humming drifted softly from the hallway, oblivious and sweet, a cruel reminder of the innocence caught in the crossfire of their fractured past. Grayson's throat burned with 1,000 words unsaid, apologies and explanations tangling together, but none seemed adequate. None could mend the 7-year chasm between them. Emma, he began hesitantly, voice low. Please, just let me explain. There's nothing to explain, she interrupted, tone flat and lifeless. Her eyes flickered to the hallway, then back to him, dark with a mix of exhaustion and bitterness. You made your choice a long time ago. It wasn't a choice, Grayson protested, the words slipping out sharper than intended. I was trying to build a future for us. Emma's laugh was hollow, bitter enough to sting. Right. Us, she echoed, shaking her head. Funny how that future never seemed to include me, or him. Grayson flinched, the accusation slicing deep. He could hardly breathe past the weight of it, the crushing guilt that had been simmering since the moment he saw Liam's grin in the parking lot. He ran a shaky hand through his hair, struggling to find footing on ground that was crumbling beneath him. I didn't know, he whispered, voice cracking. Emma, I swear I didn't know. And if you had? Her eyes were steel, daring him to lie, to make empty promises. If I'd told you, what then, Grayson? Would you have stayed? Would you have given up your empire for a family? He opened his mouth to answer, but the words faltered, stuck. He wanted to say yes. God, he wanted to mean it. But the truth was bitter and unchangeable, etched into the years that had passed without a single phone call, a single question about what he'd left behind. Emma's gaze hardened at his silence, lips pressing into a thin line. That's what I thought, she murmured, voice raw. She turned sharply, bracing herself against the counter as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her shoulders trembled, just once, a tiny betrayal that twisted the knife deeper into Grayson's chest. I didn't want to disrupt your life, she continued, tone flat with practiced detachment. You were already gone. There was no point in dragging you back out of guilt. Guilt. The word hung heavy, suffocating. Grayson swallowed thickly, the bitter taste of it filling his mouth. Emma, he tried again, voice fraying at the edges. If I'd known, if you just told me, it wouldn't have changed anything, she snapped, spinning back to face him, eyes glistening with unshed tears. You left, Grayson. You made it clear where your priorities were. I wasn't about to beg you to stay just because I... Her voice broke, a raw crack that made Grayson's own heart splinter painfully. Because you what? He breathed, the question barely audible, but Emma's eyes squeezed shut, jaw clenching. Because I loved you. She choked out, the admission raw and unguarded. Because I was stupid enough to think you'd choose me over some boardroom full of suits. Grayson took a step forward instinctively, hand half raised, but Emma flinched back, crossing her arms tighter, eyes fixed determinedly on the floor. The rejection burned, but not nearly as much as the pain in her voice, the years of loneliness and betrayal layered beneath each word. His voice cracked. Emma, I never stopped, Mom? Liam's soft voice cut through the tension, small and uncertain. He peeked around the corner, brows drawn together in confusion, and Grayson's heart lurched painfully. Emma's facade crumbled in an instant, her back straightening, eyes darting to Liam with forced brightness. Hey, baby, she murmured, swallowing hard. Everything's fine. Why don't you go finish getting ready for bed, okay? Liam's gaze flickered between them, uneasy. "But I wanted to show him my room," he protested, lip jutting in a small pout. "Can he stay for a little bit, please?" Emma's resolve faltered visibly. Her eyes slid to Grayson, guarded and wary, a thousand warnings layered beneath the hesitation. For a breathless moment, everything hung on a fragile thread, stretched taut between past hurts and the trembling uncertainty of second chances. If your mom says it's okay," Grayson managed, voice thick and unsteady. Emma's shoulders sagged, a weary sigh slipping past her lips. She looked away, jaw tight. "Just for a little bit." She relented finally, the words grudging but without venom. "You still have school in the morning." Liam's face split into a wide grin, all previous apprehension forgotten. "Okay. Come on, it's this way," he exclaimed, small fingers wrapping around Grayson's wrist with surprising determination. Grayson barely had time to process before he was being tugged down the hallway, Liam's eager chatter filling the silence. Emma's eyes lingered on them, dark and conflicted, before she turned away sharply, retreating into the kitchen. Liam's room was small but bright, walls plastered with hand-drawn pictures of superheroes and spaceships, shelves crammed with books and toys. Grayson took it all in, heart aching at every detail, the posters, the crayon-scribbled name on the door, the photos on the nightstand that didn't include him. Liam scampered onto the bed, clutching a stuffed dinosaur and looking up with wide, hopeful eyes. "Do you like it?" he asked shyly. "I picked the colors myself." Grayson cleared his throat, blinking rapidly against the sting behind his eyes. It's perfect," he rasped, the words barely holding steady. "You've got great taste." Liam beamed, kicking his feet excitedly. "Can you stay tomorrow, too?" he pressed. "Mom says you're busy, but just for a little bit." Grayson's heart fractured. He swallowed hard, throat tight. "I'll try, buddy," he whispered, voice fraying at the edges. "I promise I'll try." The word tasted foreign, too heavy, too uncertain. But Liam's grin didn't falter, his fingers curling around Grayson's sleeve, small and warm and trusting. For a moment, just a moment, Grayson let himself believe it. That maybe, somehow, he could still make things right. That maybe, if he tried hard enough, he could stitch together the fragments of a life he'd shattered with his own choices. And as Liam's soft giggles filled the room, bright and innocent, Grayson closed his eyes, the weight of guilt and hope pressing down in equal measure. The following days blurred into a mix of strained conversations, awkward silences, and Liam's bright-eyed excitement pulling Grayson through each visit. He found himself making excuses to stop by more often, dropping off groceries Emma hadn't asked for, fixing a leaky faucet she insisted was fine, lingering on the porch longer than necessary in the hopes she might invite him in. Emma remained guarded, her eyes shadowed with caution and something heavier that Grayson couldn't name. She answered his questions with clipped responses, kept her distance in small but deliberate ways, shoulders stiff whenever he drew too close. But Liam's enthusiasm never waned. Every visit was met with an eager smile, small hands grabbing at his sleeves, a dozen stories spilling from him at once. It was too easy to lose himself in those moments, to pretend, just for a little while, that this life could belong to him if he reached far enough, fought hard enough. Grayson's own home felt colder with each night he returned to it. The empty expanse of his penthouse, the silence that used to be a comfort, now pressed down on him, suffocating. He lingered by the window more often, city lights glittering below but offering no warmth. The loneliness was a dull ache, but nothing compared to the raw pain that ripped through him the morning he pulled up to Emma's house to find a car already parked outside, a blue sedan, modest but well-kept, with bumper stickers peeling at the edges. Grayson's hands clenched on the steering wheel, pulse a rapid thrum in his ears. His jaw tightened as the front door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, fair-haired, with a soft smile and easy laugh that made Liam's eyes light up. Emma followed, holding the door open, her posture relaxed in a way Grayson hadn't seen since his return. The man leaned in to press a quick kiss to her cheek, casual and familiar, and Grayson's grip on the wheel tightened until his knuckles ached. Jealousy flared hot and acidic, curling in his gut with a bitterness that made it hard to breathe. He shouldn't have been surprised. 7 years was a long time to wait for someone who never promised to come back. But knowing it and seeing it were worlds apart. When Emma's eyes flickered to the street, narrowing in recognition, Grayson forced himself to move, clambering out of his car with the stiff movements of a man walking to the gallows. He cleared his throat, hating the way it cracked. "Morning," he managed, voice strained. Emma's smile faltered, eyes cooling. "You're early," she said, tone even but not warm. Her gaze shifted to the man beside her, a flicker of something apologetic in her eyes. "Daniel, this is Grayson." Daniel's expression shifted, surprise melting into polite interest. "Ah, the Grayson," he said, extending a hand with a friendly grin. "Liam's mentioned you a lot." Grayson's mouth twitched, the words tangling bitter on his tongue as he accepted the handshake, firm, confident, the kind of handshake that spoke of a man certain in his place. It made Grayson's chest tighten painfully. "Likewise," he forced out. "Didn't know. You were seeing someone." Emma's jaw tightened, eyes flickering. "It's been a year," she said shortly, arms crossing defensively. "Daniel's Liam's teacher. He's been helpful." Daniel chuckled, ruffling Liam's hair fondly as the boy beamed up at him. "Mostly I just bribe him with candy," he admitted, eyes crinkling at the corners. "Not much of a strategy, but it seems to work." Liam laughed, bright and carefree, and the sound twisted something deep in Grayson's chest. He tried to smile, but it felt brittle, the edges cracking. "Seems effective," he muttered, forcing the words past the knot in his throat. Emma's eyes remained fixed on the ground, one hand subconsciously resting on Liam's shoulder as if to anchor herself. The distance was deliberate, a line drawn clear between past and present, and Grayson's heart ached with every careful inch of it. The conversation died in fits and starts, Daniel's attempts to fill the silence only making the tension more palpable. Finally, he cleared his throat with a sheepish grin. "Well, we'd better get going before all the good spots are taken," he said, tilting his head towards the car. "Fair starts soon." Grayson blinked. "Fair?" "The community fair," Liam piped up, eyes wide and pleading. "Can you come, too?" "Mom said it's okay." Emma's eyes snapped to Liam, lips parting in protest, but Daniel's laugh cut in, easy and warm. "The more, the merrier," he said lightly, clapping a hand on Grayson's shoulder with a friendly squeeze. "Besides, I could use the backup for the ring toss." Grayson managed a stiff nod, throat tight. He met Emma's eyes, but she looked away quickly, lips pressing into a thin line. For a moment, he almost backed out, almost turned and fled, but Liam's hand slipped into his, small and warm and hopeful, and he couldn't bring himself to pull away. The fair was a blur of two bright colors and laughter, the air thick with sugar and popcorn. Grayson moved stiffly through the crowd, a shadow trailing behind Emma and Daniel's easy companionship, his gaze drawn constantly to Liam's wide grin, the way he bounced between games with unbridled excitement. Watching Daniel lift Liam effortlessly onto his shoulders, Liam's laughter ringing out bright and free, was a fresh stab each time. The realization that this man, this kind, dependable man, had been there for the moments Grayson had missed twisted the knife deeper with every smile, every touch, every lingering glance Emma didn't quite meet. Flashbacks hit without warning, Emma's eyes bright with laughter in the glow of carnival lights, fingers sticky with cotton candy, her arm looped through his as they'd stumbled between stalls. Her smile, teasing and unguarded, a warmth Grayson hadn't felt in years. "You okay?" Daniel's voice broke the haze, easy and genuinely concerned. Grayson blinked rapidly, forcing a smile. "Yeah. Fine," he lied, voice fraying at the edges. Daniel smiled, but there was something careful about it, as if he could see the fractures Grayson was trying to hide. "Good," he said lightly. "Liam's lucky to have you around." The words were a punch to the gut, warm and sincere and utterly devastating. Grayson forced a tight nod, jaw clenched. "Yeah," he whispered, throat tight. "Lucky. From a distance, Emma's eyes met his, dark and guarded and unreadable. Before she looked away, focus shifting back to Liam with a soft smile that twisted something sharp and aching in Grayson's chest. The night ended with Grayson standing alone near the parking lot, watching Emma and Daniel buckle Liam into the back seat, their laughter drifting softly through the cooling air. Grayson's hands hung useless at his sides, fingers twitching with the urge to reach out, to pull her aside, to apologize, to say anything that might bridge the distance between them. But the words stuck, heavy and useless, as the car pulled away, headlights slicing through the dark. For the first time in a long time, Grayson felt truly, bone-deep alone. And as the taillights disappeared, Liam's laughter fading into silence, Grayson's breath shuddered out in a broken sigh, his chest aching with the realization that maybe, this time, he really was too late. The silence of Grayson's penthouse felt suffocating. He leaned against the kitchen counter, eyes fixed on the city lights below, glass of whiskey untouched by his side. The evening at the fair played on a loop in his mind, Liam's laughter, Emma's guarded eyes, Daniel's easy smiles. For the first time, the empire he'd built felt hollow, a monument to all the wrong choices. His gaze drifted to his phone, screen dark and mocking. No calls, no messages, nothing but the harsh reminder of the distance between him and the family he'd never known he had. But the thought of giving up, of letting Daniel take the place that should have been his, it was unthinkable. He'd been a coward once, but not this time. Not when there was still a chance, however small, that he could fix things. The opportunity came 2 days later when he stopped by Emma's house, a flimsy excuse about some books Liam had left in his car ready on his tongue. Emma's expression was cautious when she answered, eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Is now a bad time?" Grayson asked hesitantly, words tripping over each other. Emma sighed, one hand rubbing at her temple. "No," she said wearily, stepping aside. "Just a lot to get done. The fundraiser's in a week, and half the volunteers dropped out." "Fundraiser?" Grayson blinked, latching onto the distraction with a desperation that bordered on pathetic. "For Liam's school," Emma explained, voice tight with exhaustion. "They need new sports equipment. I offered to help organize, but it's turning into a disaster." Grayson hesitated for a heartbeat, pulse quickening. "Maybe I could help," he offered, trying for casual and landing closer to desperate. "I've planned a few events in my time." Emma's eyebrows shot up, lips parting in disbelief. "You want to help? With a bake sale?" she asked, tone flat with skepticism. He flushed, hand rising to rub awkwardly at the back of his neck. I mean not the baking part," he stammered, flustered. "But you know, decorations, logistics, budget management. I could do that." Emma stared, arms crossed defensively, a dozen retorts flickering behind her eyes. Grayson held his breath, heart stuttering, terrified she'd say no. But after a long moment, her shoulders sagged, and she let out a tired sigh. "Fine," she muttered, voice grudging. "But if you make things more complicated, I swear I won't." He interrupted quickly, relief flooding through him. "Promise." She rolled her eyes, but a faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, gone too quickly to be sure. Grayson's heart soared anyway. The next few days passed in a blur of late nights, spreadsheets, and way too much glitter. Grayson arrived early and stayed late, fetching coffee, arranging tables, stringing up lights with clumsy fingers and awkward smiles. Emma stayed distant at first, keeping to clipped instructions and careful, impersonal conversations. But the walls began to chip slowly, piece by piece, soft laughs when Grayson tangled himself in fairy lights, hesitant smiles when he made some self-deprecating joke about his lack of decorating skills. By the third night, Emma no longer stiffened when he brushed past, no longer flinched from his hand when he offered her a cup of tea, fingers brushing briefly. It was enough to build hope, fragile but real. The gymnasium glowed with soft lights and homemade banners by the night of the fundraiser. Parents and kids filled the tables, laughter echoing off high ceilings. Grayson moved through the crowd with Liam bouncing at his heels, a warmth blooming in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Emma was in the corner by the bake sale, directing volunteers with tired eyes and a smile that flickered between strained and genuine. Grayson approached cautiously, heart pounding a rhythm against his ribcage. "You look like you could use a break," he ventured, voice soft. "Wanna get some air?" Emma's eyes flickered to him, skepticism warring with exhaustion. But she exhaled, shoulders slumping, and finally nodded. 5 minutes, she muttered, already moving towards the exit. The air outside was cool and crisp, a relief after the crowded warmth of the gym. Emma leaned back against the wall, arms crossed loosely, eyes fixed on the distant streetlights. Grayson hesitated, words tangling on his tongue. "You did a great job," he started awkwardly. "The decorations, the turnout, everything." Emma snorted softly, rolling her eyes. "You mean we did?" she corrected dryly. "God knows half of this would still be in boxes if you hadn't shown up with color-coded spreadsheets." Grayson huffed a quiet laugh, shoulders easing. The silence that settled was softer, almost comfortable, punctuated only by the distant music and laughter from inside. "I missed this," he admitted finally, voice low, almost a whisper. "Us. You." Emma's posture stiffened immediately, eyes darkening. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't start." "I'm sorry," he rushed out, hands lifting in a placating gesture. I needed to say it. I shouldn't have left, Emma. I know that. I knew it then, and I was a coward. I thought if I just worked hard enough, built something big enough, it would make it okay. That maybe it would be worth it. And was it?" Her voice was cold, but her eyes glistened, fingers white-knuckled around her own arms. "Was it worth it?" Grayson's laugh was hollow, broken. "No," he choked out. "God, no. Leaving you was the biggest mistake I ever made." Emma's eyes squeezed shut, jaw tight. "Don't do this," she whispered, voice cracking. "Don't come back now, after all these years, and pretend I never stopped loving you." Grayson blurted, the words raw and desperate. "Not for a single day." Her breath hitched, eyes flying open, wide and startled. For a heartbeat, the anger melted, leaving only pain, aching and unguarded. Grayson's hands trembled with the urge to reach out, to pull her close, to beg for another chance. But Emma's jaw clenched, eyes hardening in an instant. "I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't do this, Grayson," she choked, turning sharply away. "Not again. Emma, please go." She cut in, voice raw and uneven. "Just go." Grayson's hands fell limp at his sides, heart cracking painfully. He hesitated, one step forward, then back, and Emma flinched, arms wrapping tighter around herself. The plea died in his throat, suffocated by the look in her eyes, dark and wounded and untrusting. The headlights of his car blurred as he pulled away, vision hazy with unshed tears. His hands shook on the wheel, heart pounding a sick, unsteady rhythm. But through the rearview mirror, Emma's silhouette stayed framed in the gymnasium doorway, motionless, watching until his car disappeared into the dark. Grayson spent most of the weekend in his office, not working so much as staring blankly at spreadsheets and unread emails, hands buried in his hair. The whiskey bottle on the desk stayed half full, untouched, the amber liquid catching slivers of sunlight that filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He couldn't erase the image of Emma's eyes, raw and fractured, or the way her voice had broken when she told him to go. Each word replayed relentlessly, cruel and final. The realization that he might have already lost her, for good this time, settled heavy and sick in his gut, a weight that refused to lift. The vibration of his phone snapped him out of the spiral, the screen flashing with a name that sent a fresh jolt of panic through his veins. Emma. His hand trembled as he picked up, breath stuttering. "Emma? It's Liam," she said, voice strained and brittle. He's been asking for you. If you're not too busy, maybe you could come over for dinner?" Grayson's heart lurched painfully. "Of course," he breathed, words tumbling too quickly, too desperate. I'll be right there." The drive was a blur of red lights and drumming fingers on the steering wheel, the knot in his chest tightening with every mile. He pulled up to the modest house, headlights casting pale light on the porch, and barely had time to knock before the door swung open. Liam barreled into him with a delighted laugh, small arms wrapping around his legs. "You're here!" he crowed, beaming. "I thought you weren't gonna come!" Grayson's chest squeezed painfully. He sank to one knee, arms wrapping around Liam, voice cracking. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy," he whispered, throat tight. Emma stood in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes wary but softer than the last time they'd met. The silence between them was thick and heavy, but she didn't tell him to leave. That was something, at least. Dinner was quieter than usual, tension seeping into every pause, but Liam's chatter filled the worst of the gaps. Grayson listened with half an ear, eyes flickering constantly to Emma, at the faint shadows under her eyes, the way she fiddled with the hem of her sweater when she thought no one was looking. Liam broke off in the middle of a story about the class pet, eyes wide and hopeful. "Can you stay forever this time?" he asked suddenly, voice small but earnest. Grayson's fork stilled midair, heart slamming painfully against his ribs. His eyes snapped to Emma, but she was staring at her plate, jaw clenched, fingers trembling slightly around her glass. Grayson cleared his throat, voice fraying. I'll try, buddy," he said softly. "I promise I'll try." Liam's face split into a wide grin, teeth missing on one side, and Grayson's heart broke a little more. After dinner, Emma lingered by the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes with mechanical movements, eyes fixed firmly on the soapy water. Grayson hovered uselessly, hands shoved in his pockets, tongue too heavy to form words. "I'll help," he offered hesitantly, stepping forward. Emma tensed but didn't protest when he took a plate from her hands, fingers brushing briefly. The touch sent sparks skittering up his arm, and he nearly dropped the dish in his haste to recover. The silence stretched, brittle and suffocating. Finally, Emma exhaled sharply, setting a cup down with a little too much force. "We need to talk," she said, voice low and strained. "Outside." Grayson's pulse skipped erratically, palms damp as he followed her out onto the porch. The air was crisp, biting at his cheeks, but Grayson barely noticed past the hammering in his chest. Emma leaned against the railing, arms wrapped tightly around herself, gaze fixed somewhere past the streetlights. Her jaw was tight, eyes glistening in the dim light. For a long moment she didn't speak, and Grayson's heart tripped painfully, the silence stretching too thin. "You can't keep doing this," she said finally, voice brittle. "Showing up, making promises you can't keep. It's not fair to him." Grayson flinched, words tumbling out too fast. I know it's not, and I'm sorry. I want to be here. For him. For you." Emma's laugh was hollow, bitter. "For how long?" she demanded, eyes flashing. "Until the next board meeting? The next acquisition? Until you get bored and decide we're not worth the trouble again?" Grayson's breath caught, guilt twisting deep and raw. "Emma," he started, voice cracking. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, I know that. But I want to try. I want to make things right." Her eyes squeezed shut, a tear slipping free before she could swipe it away, frustrated and trembling. "It's not that simple," she choked. "You left. You can't just come back 7 years later and expect I never stopped loving you," he blurted, voice raw and desperate. "Not for a single day. I was a coward, and I was wrong, and I am so sorry, Emma." Her breath itched painfully, shoulders shaking with the effort to hold herself together. Grayson took a cautious step forward, hands trembling at his sides. "Please," he whispered, voice breaking. "Please let me try. I'll spend every day proving it if you give me one more chance." Her eyes snapped open, dark and shattered, lips parting with something that might have been a sob if she hadn't bitten it back. "I can't do this again," she rasped, voice cracking. "I can't. I'm not going anywhere," Grayson promised, voice fierce and fraying at the edges. "I swear to God, Emma, I'm not leaving. I'll quit my job if that's what it takes." I'll move here, whatever you need, I'll do it. Just please. Her eyes searched his, dark and raw and hesitant, the walls crumbling with every shaky breath. Grayson's heart pounded, hands trembling with the urge to reach out, to close the distance between them. Finally, Emma exhaled a shuddering breath, shoulders sagging, and looked away, jaw tight. I don't. Her voice wavered, eyes glistening. I don't trust you, she whispered, so soft it nearly broke him. I know, Grayson rasped, throat tight. But I'll earn it back. I promise. She was silent for a long, agonizing moment, eyes fixed firmly on the ground, hands twisting in the hem of her sweater. Grayson's breath caught painfully, lungs burning, the plea tangled and desperate on his tongue. But then Emma's shoulders slumped, a tiny exhale slipping past her lips, and she closed her eyes, defeated. Okay, she breathed, so faint it was almost a ghost of a word. One chance. That's all. Grayson's breath left him in a rush, heart soaring and aching all at once. His hands shook with the effort to stay still, to not crush her into his arms and never let go. Thank you? He choked out, voice breaking. Emma, thank you? She didn't meet his eyes, arms wrapping tighter around herself, but she didn't move away, either. The silence stretched, heavy but no longer suffocating, the smallest flicker of hope threading through the cracks. And as the night settled soft around them, Grayson let himself believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Grayson kept his promise. He stepped back from the day-to-day grind, handed off projects to his executives, and set his phone to do not disturb more times in a week than he had in the past 7 years combined. His calendar, once packed with board meetings and flights to 3 different cities in the same day, now held scribbled reminders of school pickups, Liam's soccer practices, and Saturday afternoons blocked out simply with the word family. The decision wasn't easy. There were arguments, board members outraged, investors spitting fire and threats of lawsuits. But Grayson had stood firm, voice steady and unyielding. For the first time in years he didn't waver. The fight drained him, but not as much as the silence that came after, when the calls stopped and the emails slowed, leaving only the quiet realization of how much time he'd wasted chasing a life that now seemed empty. But the moment Liam barreled into his arms outside the school gates, all wide eyes and gap-toothed grins, the uncertainty faded. Every hug, every laugh, every small hand slipping trustingly into his own, each one anchored Grayson back to the ground, to the life he wanted more than anything. Emma was cautious, careful not to let the cracks in her walls show. She watched him with eyes still wary, arms often crossed, and answered his attempts at conversation with short, measured replies. But she didn't tell him to leave. She didn't ask him to stop coming by for dinner, or to quit helping with Liam's homework at the kitchen table, or to stop making her tea just the way she liked it, too much sugar, not enough milk. Grayson took every inch she offered and never pushed for more, terrified that one wrong move might send her running. The guilt still gnawed at him, late at night, in the quiet dark of his empty penthouse, with only the city lights for company. But in the daylight, with Liam's laughter ringing out, and Emma's eyes softening despite herself, Grayson let himself believe it could be enough. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, sun spilling over the kitchen tiles as Grayson helped Liam tie his shoes, fingers clumsy and unfamiliar with laces. Emma's eyes flickered with faint amusement from the doorway, but she didn't intervene. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. Grayson glanced up, forcing a grin past the nerves fluttering in his stomach. "I think I can handle a day at the park," he said, attempting lightness. Emma's mouth twitched, but she only hummed, arms wrapping loosely around herself. "Just call if you need anything." The park was different than Grayson remembered. New swings, the paint fresher, the trees taller, but the small wooden bench under the willow tree was the same, worn and scuffed at the edges. Grayson's chest ached with memories of summer afternoons and whispered confessions, of Emma's laugh and the way her hand fit so perfectly in his. Liam's excitement was boundless, dragging Grayson from one spot to the next, swings, slides, the duck pond, ice cream dripping down their hands and laughter too bright to contain. Grayson's heart ached with it, with the joy and the guilt and the overwhelming gratitude that he was here to see it, to be part of it. They stopped at the bench eventually, Liam's energy finally waning, small head lolling against Grayson's shoulder with sleepy murmurs about ducks and dragonflies. Grayson wrapped an arm around him, holding tight, eyes misting as he gazed out over the park. For a moment, he let himself remember Emma's head on his shoulder, fingers intertwined, sunlight filtering through the willow branches. Her eyes bright and unguarded, voice soft with promises they'd been too young to understand. His throat tightened painfully. He barely noticed the footsteps until a shadow fell across them, and Grayson glanced up sharply, guilt flaring. But Emma's eyes were soft, her arms uncrossed, her shoulders relaxed in a way that sent hope twisting painfully through his chest. "Hey," she greeted, voice quieter, gentler. Grayson swallowed, voice cracking on the return greeting. "Hey." She hesitated for a breath, then sank down onto the bench beside them, eyes flickering to Liam with a softness that made Grayson's chest ache. "He looks happy," she murmured, fingers twisting absently in her sleeve. Grayson's breath caught, fingers tightening unconsciously around Liam's shoulder. "I hope so," he whispered, voice raw. Emma's eyes slid to him, dark and searching. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, but not suffocating. Grayson's heart pounded, words tangling desperately on his tongue, but he bit them back, afraid to shatter the moment. But then Emma exhaled softly, her posture deflating, eyes glistening. You're not going back, are you?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Grayson's chest clenched, head shaking instantly, words tumbling out too fast. "No," he swore, voice cracking. "I meant what I said, Emma. I'm done. I want to be here. With you. With Liam." Her eyes squeezed shut, a tear slipping free before she could swipe it away, jaw tight with the effort to hold herself together. I don't know if I can trust you," she choked. "Not after everything." Grayson's heart splintered. "I know," he whispered, voice breaking. "I know. But I'll spend every day proving that you can. I promise." The tears fell faster, unchecked, and Emma's hands trembled as she wiped at them furiously, a broken laugh slipping past her lips. Grayson's chest ached, hands twitching with the urge to reach out, to hold, to comfort. And then, without warning, Emma's resolve crumbled completely. She let out a choked sob, shoulders shaking, and Grayson moved instinctively, arms wrapping around her, pulling her into his chest. Her fingers fisted in his shirt, clinging with a desperation that shattered him entirely. "I miss you," she whispered, voice broken and raw. "I hate how much I miss you." Grayson's eyes burned, a sob choking out past the lump in his throat. "I'm so sorry," he rasped, voice fraying. "God, Emma, I'm so sorry." They stayed like that for what felt like hours, tangled and trembling, clinging to each other with every ounce of pain and regret and hope that had built up over 7 long years. The wind rustled softly through the willow branches, sunlight filtering warm and golden through the leaves. When Emma finally pulled back, eyes red-rimmed but soft, her fingers stayed curled in his shirt, not quite letting go. Grayson's breath hitched, heart pounding with fragile hope. "I don't know if it's enough," she whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know if I can just forget." "You don't have to," Grayson promised, voice fierce and raw. "We'll start over. However long it takes, I'll wait. I'm not going anywhere." Emma's eyes searched his, dark and hesitant, but a flicker of something softer, something warmer, glinted beneath the tears. She exhaled shakily, shoulders slumping, and leaned into him, forehead pressing to his chest with a small, broken laugh. Grayson's arms tightened instinctively, eyes slipping shut, heart pounding with the tiniest, flickering thread of hope. And for the first time in 7 years, he believed that maybe, somehow, they could make it. The year passed in slow, careful steps. Grayson resigned as CEO 3 months after that day in the park, hands shaking only slightly as he signed the papers and watched his life's work pass into someone else's hands. The board was furious, investors more so, but Grayson held firm, voice steady even as his heart pounded a frantic rhythm against his ribs. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. Unmoored and uncertain, maybe, but light. The kind of light that came with shedding something heavy, something that had worn him down to brittle edges and frayed seams. Emma had been cautious, eyes narrowed with skepticism when he told her, lips parting in disbelief. You really quit?" she'd breathed, voice small and stunned. "I did," Grayson had replied, forcing a smile that trembled at the corners. "I wanted to be here. Really be here. If you'll still have me." Emma's eyes had glistened, mouth trembling, and she hadn't answered. But she'd let him pull her into his arms, let her head fall against his shoulder, and her hands had clutched at his shirt like she was afraid he'd slip away again if she let go. That had been enough. In the months that followed, Grayson threw himself into something new, something that mattered. The nonprofit started small, just a few rooms rented in an old office building, but the response was overwhelming. Single parents, young mothers, fathers who lost their way, people walked through those doors every day, eyes hollow but hopeful. Emma's hands had covered her mouth when she'd seen the sign, second chances, the first time, eyes glistening with something Grayson didn't dare put a name to yet. Her smile had been wobbly, tearful, but real. And that had been enough, too. His phone was still full of voicemails from old business partners, questions and demands and accusations, but he rarely listened to them. He was too busy helping Liam with homework, too busy painting walls in the nonprofit's community room or organizing fundraisers with Emma, who'd taken to the work with a passion that left Grayson breathless. Slowly, the house had filled with laughter again, real laughter, bright and unrestrained, Liam's giggles ringing out from the backyard, Emma's eyes crinkling at the corners, soft and unguarded. It was slow, hesitant, each smile a small victory, but it was progress. It was everything. And then, before he'd even realized, a year had passed. Grayson stood in the backyard of Emma's modest house, fingers clumsy with nerves as he arranged the fairy lights one last time. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and Liam's excited giggles echoed from the kitchen window, muffled but unmistakable. His heart pounded, palms damp despite the cool evening air. He smoothed a hand down the front of his shirt, breathing deeply, forcing the nerves to settle. He'd faced down boardrooms full of investors, furious lawyers, reporters with questions that cut to the bone, but nothing had ever terrified him quite like this. The screen door creaked open, and Grayson's breath caught as Emma stepped outside, eyes wide and lips parting in soft surprise. The lights cast a warm glow over her, hair tumbling over her shoulders, eyes glistening with a mix of confusion and something softer. "Grayson?" she breathed, voice small. "What is?" "I have to say something," he blurted, words tumbling out too fast, too desperate. "And if I don't say it now, I might just let me get this out, okay?" Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't move, fingers curling into the hem of her sweater. "Okay," she whispered, voice wavering. Grayson exhaled shakily, hands slipping into his pocket, fingers brushing the cool metal of the ring box. His heart thundered, hands trembling, but he forced the words out, voice cracking but earnest. "I know I can't undo what I did," he started, voice raw and stumbling. "I know I can't make up for 7 years of mistakes with a few months of trying to do better. But I love you. I never stopped. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that, if you let me." Emma's eyes glistened, breath hitching audibly, fingers white-knuckled around her sleeves. Grayson took a shaky breath, dropping to one knee, the ring box trembling between his fingers. Emma's hands flew to her mouth, a choke sound escaping, eyes wide and tear-bright. "I want to come home," Grayson whispered, voice breaking. "To you and Liam. I want to make things right. So, will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, the world held its breath, suspended in silence. Grayson's chest ached with the weight of it, lungs burning, hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped the ring. And then Emma's breath left in a shuddering sob, hands covering her mouth as tears streaked freely down her cheeks. Her head dipped, a small, breathless laugh slipping past her lips, and she nodded, shoulders shaking with the force of it. "Yes," she choked, voice cracking. "God, yes!" The air rushed back into Grayson's lungs in a broken sob, eyes burning, and he surged to his feet, arms wrapping around her, the ring box slipping forgotten to the grass. Emma's hands clutched desperately at him, fingers tangling in his hair, face buried in his shoulder, tears dampening his shirt. Liam's delighted squeal pierced the air, tiny feet pounding across the porch. "You're getting married?" he crowed, eyes wide and sparkling. "Does that mean we get cake?" Emma's laugh was wet and hiccuping, face burrowing deeper into Grayson's shoulder, but her nod was firm. "Yeah," she managed, voice fraying at the edges. "We get cake." The wedding was small and simple, just close friends and family, fairy lights strung through the backyard trees, Liam beaming as he handed over the rings with a grin so wide it threatened to split his face. Emma's eyes were bright with tears, voice trembling as she whispered her vows, fingers soft and warm in Grayson's shaking hands. And when she said, "I do," smile wobbly but sure, Grayson's heart felt too full, too raw, breaking and mending all at once. They kissed under the setting sun, laughter and applause rising around them, and Grayson's hands tightened in Emma's dress, eyes slipping shut, breath catching on a sob that tasted like forgiveness. That night, with the stars winking softly above and fairy lights casting a warm glow, Grayson sank into the grass, Liam giggling from his shoulders and Emma's head resting on his arm. The past felt distant, faded, no longer clawing at his heels but settled peacefully, a shadow without teeth. Emma's fingers intertwined with his, grip firm and steady, and Liam's sleepy mumbling softened to quiet breaths. The air was cool, carrying the scent of grass and vanilla, and Grayson's eyes slipped shut, heart full and steady. He let himself believe, truly, fully believe, that he was finally home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps out the channel. And if you want more heartwarming and emotional stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this one, I'd love to hear your reactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.